let's go ahead and get started today on talking about Microsoft Defender's product. Joining me today is Microsoft's principal collaboration and security architect and all around just great guy, Kevin Martins.
Hey,
So,
thank you, Chris. Appreciate being on here. Yeah, that we're looking forward to a great conversation today, as always.
yeah, man. So let's just dive into this. So, like I said, it's I'm Chris, and we have Kevin on here. So, let's talk about the agenda first, right? So we're going to talk about the threat landscape today. We're going to talk about some of the history of Microsoft Defender. We're going to start diving into, all the portions of Microsoft Defender being 365, identity, CASB, endpoint. If we have time, we'll even dive a little bit into Sentinel. We have our plan B in case we have some time here today, right, Kevin?
Great, great.
So after that, we'll go into some next steps as well. So, like I said, we have some polls out there, so feel free to join those polls, or if you have some information that you want to ask questions about through the presentation, feel free. So, today's threat landscape, right? It continues to evolve, and it makes, responding to those threats increasingly complex, right? So, we know that all the bad actors are out there, and a lot of people know, and some people don't know that they're developing their sophisticated attacks to get faster than ever, right? They're growing their attack surfaces to increase the vulnerability that complicates security for everybody, right? It's not just, the people that run the enterprises, but it's for the entire organization. Some of the stats when Kevin and I talked about putting this presentation together, when we were looking up some of these stats, they even shocked me, right? So 91% of cyber attacks start with email alone, right? Just email. That's how their entry point is 91% of them. Another stat that came in that Kevin and I found, and this one I think even baffled Kevin the most, right? Over 10,000 domains are created every day by people that are trying to get into your system. Like they're trying to, if they're doing a Microsoft one, instead of doing, an O for in Microsoft, they will do a zero, right? They're going to Microsoft.com, but with a zero. So they're trying to think of any way that they can get past you. The reports last year from 2021 that $1.9 billion was estimated in lost revenue because of the threat landscape today. 1.1 billion with a B, right? That's that's a big number. And another one that I found impressive, to be honest, right, was over 168,000 phishing sites. 168,000 were taken down by Microsoft alone in 2021 by all the things that they're doing in today with their threat landscape.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, I'll just add something real quick. Yeah, absolutely. So when we think about email threats, okay, many of us know about spam emails that come through and phishing emails and malware attachments and so forth. And sure, Microsoft has a solution as part of the Microsoft Defender suite of products to help thwart and detect those threats. But when we think about what's next, collaboration threats, think about Teams. Think about any other collaboration type of product that's out there, and think about where that starts. It starts with identity. So if I log in to my Microsoft account, and let's just say I just have a username and password, and those credentials are stolen. Okay, so now someone else has logged in with those credentials, and they reach across to Chris at Converge One. Hey, Chris, how you doing? Check out this link to this site I just found. I think you'll find it interesting. Well, for all Chris knows, it's me. Because when it comes to email, we're all conditioned now, or most of us, to really kind of treat those with a bit of suspicion, right? Like, is that really Kevin emailing me? But when it comes to something like Microsoft Teams and one person sending an instant message to another, we just assume, I think for the most part, most of us do, that that is Kevin or that is Chris, and you don't even question it. Well, that's a new attack vector. That's something all of us are using these products now. You have to think about things such as that. And you can't just think of it in terms of one product that's going to help protect things like instant messaging and identity. You have to think further down the line because eventually a really good malicious actor is going to get by that first door, that first security doors, so to speak. Well, what's next? We've got to have several other doors in place to be able to detect and correlate all of those threats together. So that's why we're going to talk a little bit about those products today, along with shadow IT, endpoint threats, and then how do you sort through all of those unstructured signals that are there? So that's a lot lined up here. We're going to move really fast through these,
Yeah.
but please, like Chris said, any questions? Ask away in the chat window, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. So before we talk about how we are today, let's talk about give a little brief history lesson, Kevin. Let's talk about how Defender started and how it got to where it is today.
Yeah, you bet. So, Microsoft Defender, it first started out in 2004. That was a long time ago. Seems like yesterday to many of us. It started out after Microsoft purchased Giant anti-spyware. Then we rolled it out as Microsoft anti-spyware in 2005. For the old Windows 2000 and XP systems. We're going way back. Then later in 2005, it was renamed to Microsoft Security Essentials, where we first started to enable the download of virus definitions. Then in Windows 8, Microsoft Security Essentials was renamed to Windows. I said Windows Defender, and it became a full-blown antivirus application. In Windows 10, something interesting happened. Windows Defender was enabled on by default. This was the first time Microsoft shipped a product like this that was on, and it received a bit of controversy, right? Well, we did it because we realized that so many customers were not enabling other products out there, other very good products such as Symantec and McAfee and so on and so forth. Or if they did, they weren't resubscribing to those products a year later to provide that level of protection. So finally, in May of 2020, Windows Defender was renamed rather, Microsoft Defender, and that's where it stands today. But along with that, we're just talking about endpoint security. Now to address the 91% of all attacks coming through still happen through email, there's Microsoft Exchange Online Protection, or before that, it was Forefront Online Protection for Exchange. That eventually, that still exists today, Exchange Online Protection. That's enabled with everyone who has an account on Microsoft 365 and Exchange Server. But now there's an advanced part of that, and that's Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection, or ATP, which was renamed to Microsoft Defender, again, the Defender suite of products, Defender for Office. That enables us to look at a lot of email. I'm talking over 1 billion every month of emails coming in that are flagged with malicious content to them, whether it be URLs that lead to malicious websites, some of those 100,000+ that Chris mentioned before, or bits of ransomware that might be coming in. So ATP enables us to really sandbox and detonate those types of emails and evaluate those emails as they come in before they get delivered. Those are detecting threats that are happening and changing and being developed and released every single day that no one has seen before. If you haven't seen it before, how can you detect that there's something going on with it? That's where Microsoft Defender for Office comes in, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. So Defender and all of the products around it has been around for a long, long time, and we'll get into those as we go forward here.
Yeah, so I mean, great history on that, right? So how can we use Microsoft Defender today? As he said, it had a long history and how it's gotten there today. And so you can utilize Microsoft now to empower all your organization's defenders, right? You can help put all the right tools in place and all the intelligence in the hands of all the right people in your organization, and they can combine SIEM and XDR, which is, extended detection and response. So it's taken it a step further today to increase your efficiencies and your effectiveness while securing your entire your estate, right? So you can get insights from your organization. You can use native SIEM that comes with this, being Microsoft Sentinel, which hopefully we'll have some time later to get into this. But you can use the integrated and automated XDR capabilities that come with the 365 platform now, that is known as in the Defender suite, right? So you can help start securing your infrastructure and using Defender for clouds. I mean, you can do Office, you can do identity, you can do CASB, which is probably the hidden gem in everything, right, Kevin? Um, as well as how Endpoint can do now. So we dropped a poll out there. People are responding already, and it looks like a lot of people are using it right now for the endpoints in their computers. But maybe that you're going to find out some stuff today on other ways that you can use it, right? You want to add anything on that, Kevin, before we head on?
No, I'm going to place a link into the window that just came out today from CNBC that talks about how big Microsoft security products have become. It's now a $15 billion a year industry and expected to grow. Perhaps there will be more on that with earnings that are being released later on today. It's a big business. There's a lot of products in here, of which we're just covering a few of them.
Yep. Yeah. So, before I know I keep saying before we dive in, but a couple little things I forgot we dropped these slides in there, right? So don't take our word on it, right? There's been independent studies out there that Gartner and Forrester have done, and Microsoft Security, they're a leader in 5 of the Magic Quadrants that they have out there right now. The 5, if you can't see it on the screen, because I know it's a little bit of an eye chart, but access management, cloud access security brokers or CASB, right? Enterprise information archiving, endpoint protection platforms, and unified endpoint management. And Forrester did their own study, right? And so on 9 of their waves, Microsoft's a leader on those. So it's not just Kevin being at Microsoft and me being at Converge One, just trying to get people to use it. These are studies that Forrester and Gartner have done as industry studies that are showing that Microsoft is a true player and a leader in all of these categories now. So let's dive in, Kevin. You ready? You ready to buckle up and,
Let's
and
do
try
it.
to
Let's
get
do it.
through this?
Yep.
Because we
We've
got a
got
lot to cover,
45
my man.
minutes. Let's do it.
That's right. So with Defender, right, the catch rate has improved to 99.9% as a result to how much Microsoft has been, focusing and developing the capabilities in this area. So the attachments and the detonations have dropped to an average of 60 seconds where it's just a few seconds today, right? So it went where it took us a while to catch it, and now it's like we're catching it really quick. They started scanning the web links as they're coming in, as they're first being sent. Not only are they doing it now when they're coming through Exchange, right, went through EOP, but on point in time click, and we have a slight demo, I think, in this slide deck too. And the Office ATP or Advanced Threat Protection is more for Office 365 users than all the competitors, right? So there's a lot of different ways people can use this today. So why Microsoft, right? So the industry leadership and the customer appreciation comes down to 3 of the key differentiators, right? So we have the native protection for Office 365 that helps protect your organizations against the threats to email and collaboration tools that Kevin was mentioning earlier, not just email anymore, right? It's Teams as well. And it's natively integrated with the solution. So it's built in protection that maximizes your user productivity, right? While the integration simplifies the administrations and reduces the total cost of ownership, which is a good thing for all of us. Industry leading AI, and this is thing that they constantly are just improving. Not that it's not good now, but they have the unmatched breadth of the intelligence that creates the most continuously improved prevention and detection and automation capabilities in the industry. Combined with this, it leaves less incidents for security teams to investigate, and it lowers the remediation of times for that remain. As well as their comprehensive approach, they have a holistic approach and rich integration with the 365 Defender that provides a comprehensive solution for threat protection, bringing it together with the end-to-end cross-domain coverage with the awareness training and the security posture guidance that creates a simple solution to ensure your organization is covered. So with that today, you have popped up in front of me. You can extend your protection beyond email, like we were talking about briefly a minute ago, right? With Defender for Office 365, we make it easy to protect not just your email, but all of 365, right? Including Teams. I mentioned earlier, we have safe links and safe attachments that take it beyond just email, and it can take it over into SharePoint, into Teams, into Office, and your apps. When we detected a message that may be malicious, we'll send it to quarantine for you, automatic, right? It's a dedicated policy that lets you configure how end users interact with the messages that have already been quarantined, and it can allow them to review and release messages that have already been sent out to them. With the new email entity page, you can help view detailed analysis of the messages in case the flags that were set inappropriate, like containing a URL that contain malicious reputation out there. In that case, you can see the message that was delivered to the user, and despite the identification of the content, because the tenant allowed a rule or an override. The response and the remediation, right? ZAP, the 0-hour auto protection or auto purge retroactively deletes and neutralizes the malicious phishing, spam, and malware messages that have already been delivered. Zap can take a variety of the actions on a message, like moving from a quarantine or junk or deleting, any of those actions, like adding an X header or modifying the subject line. When you configure those policies in Defender for Office 365, you can specify the action that takes on a different types of message when they have identified the malicious post on delivery. And outside of all that, you can do the simulations and the training. This is one of the coolest features that I find in this product, right? So you can help spread security awareness by doing some of the trainings that come in with the Defender product, right? You can help do your own phishing campaigns and own kind of ways to trick your own users to make sure that they're starting to identify those links or those emails or those bad actors like Kevin was talking about before. Do you know that it's actually Kevin from Microsoft? So I mean, there's the awareness training that comes built into it now.
So Chris, before you move on, I think our
Sure.
next one is a quick demo. Um, I'm looking at the poll results here, and they're always very interesting. I see Proofpoint, Mimecast, Barracuda, Microsoft Defender. That's awesome, of course. Some people say they don't need protection, and then there's of course others that are there too. But there's a lot of products out there, and a lot of very good products, right? And the one thing to understand about all of the products is no one is 100%. There is always going to be something that slips by, Microsoft Defender included. It's just what other products are out there to help catch these things as they do get by. So start to ask yourself and ask yourself about your current solution. When I think about the slides that Chris just went over when it comes to Microsoft Defender for Office, when we talk about prevention, right? Chris had a slide up that had a checkbox that's not enabled by default that enables you to take Defender for Office and apply it not just to email coming through, but also SharePoint and Teams and OneDrive. And what does that mean? So that means that if I send Chris a URL across Teams, Defender for Office is going to intercept that, right? And before I can click on it and do anything with it, Defender for Office is going to reach out to that domain and scan it for any type of malicious content. At first, Microsoft's got a huge catalog of sites that are known to have malicious content. That's going to check there first, and if it's not found, it will actually reach out to those websites and do a scan on it, right? Same thing with SharePoint, right? If I'm clicking on a file that's coming out of SharePoint, right, we're going to scan that, all right? With OneDrive, think about OneDrive and syncing. If I take a file and I save it to my desktop, and by default, OneDrive is on and it's syncing up to Office 365. Well, during that sync process, that's another great checkpoint. During that sync process, I might have Symantec Antivirus or McAfee or whatever it may be. Hey, that's a great, they're both great products, but what if they don't know about that file that's now uploading into the Microsoft Cloud, into your tenant, right? That product, because it's so integrated across Microsoft 365 products, will see that and identify it, hopefully, and flag it and prevent that from syncing up, as well as sending and tripping off alerts to your security team. Awesome stuff. Great integration. And when we do talk about awareness and training, like Chris had mentioned, training is built in. When I think of other products that are out there that do phishing simulations, again, to help train your users against these types of attacks, which have really done an amazingly well done job, that's built in now. That's part of what you're paying for here. Why have a third-party service when you've got the same thing here, complete with custom designs who can design phishing attacks, to reporting, to also, hey, if you failed, the phishing attack that was just launched on you, you now have 30 days to take these, 10 new training sessions on anti-phishing, right? All of that's built in. All of that's integrated with Microsoft Defender for Office. So keep that in mind and start asking yourself questions about those other products that are out there and say, geez, what am I really paying for? Am I paying for 3 different products, that might cost 3 times as much for what's included already here? Another thing to understand is that some licensing with M365 includes all of these items. So you might already be paying for it and perhaps paying double if you do have other services out there. Chris, go ahead. Sorry, you want to take off with
No
the demo
worries.
or anything else to add?
I was gonna say, since we're halfway through our time, you want to just jump ahead, and if we have time, we can come back to the demo.
Sure, let's do it.
Yeah. So let's go on. Let's move on to Defender for Identity. You wanna kind of guide us through that a little bit?
Yeah, sure thing. So when we think about identity, right, it's really easy to miss different things. You know, identity, the number one thing you can do is multi-factor authentication, right? That right there will eliminate over 99% of your security risk. And MFA is built in again to Microsoft 365. It's built into Azure to help protect those identities. Who's to say that you know about that or that stat or other things that are out there, right? That's where Defender for Identity really comes in. Can you move to the next slide, please? I'll just
Sure.
highlight
Sorry.
a couple of
Yeah.
things. Yeah. So a couple of things here. Legacy protocols and their usage. Legacy protocols are still out there, right? And I'm talking about email protocols such as IMAP and POP. Have you disabled those? What about other types of legacy authentications, also called basic authentication? Basic auth does not support MFA, right? You're only using the usernames and passwords, which doesn't provide you with a lot of protection any longer. Attackers are not going to portal.office.com, which is how we sign into Office 365 through the web. They're using basic authentication methods to launch their spray attacks. In fact, password spray attacks. In fact, 99% of the attacks that we see as Microsoft are done using legacy authentication protocols. Credential stuffing attacks, 97% of those are using legacy auth, right? We also have found that Azure Active Directory accounts, your identities, with legacy auth disabled have 67% fewer identity compromises. That's huge. So just by disabling those, you can eliminate a lot of your threat landscape that's out there. But I want to stress that you don't want to just disable those. Sure, you can click a button to disable those, but you might be turning off something very, very important or many things that are important to your organization that have been using those for a long, long time. So it's very important to get in someone that really understands what's going on here, how to pull the right reports, how to track down the reports, the IP addresses, the server names, the host names, to understand, hey, what processes are using these? Why are they using them? And what's the plan to get off of those so you can eventually and hopefully very quickly disable those types of protocols. Some other things such as Spore, Sprint Spore, the server Spore services, right? There was something called Print Nightmare that was something big that was in the last summer, July 2021.
Yeah.
Impacted all versions of Windows. Well, hey, that's a Print Spore service. Why have it on if you're not using it? Okay, so my point is you can have reports coming out of Microsoft Defender for Identity that talk about all of these, that highlight different things across your entire organization that you may not even be thinking about, right? That's what you need, especially if you've already got a security team that's bogged down, trying to do their daily activities. Any report like this, it's going to bring up active things or suggestions and help guide you through those. That's what you need, and that's what identity can provide for you. Let's go on to CASB. Want to hit that?
Casby, the hidden gem over here. This is
Yeah.
the one when we were putting this together. We kind of got out of hand with the slides, and we had to reel it back in.
Yeah,
Casby's cool.
CASB's great. What is it, right? It really controls access to your data, right? And so what's interesting about this, it's Microsoft Cloud App Security, but it's not just for Microsoft products. Sure, it's in the Microsoft Cloud. You can enable it very, very easily on here, but it does take some understanding and some configuration to really get it into play. And that's where, again, you need some expertise from people that don't do it just once, but do it every day in different organizations. So it can look at your on-premises infrastructure as well as different cloud platforms such as the Google Cloud or Amazon Web Services. It integrates with over 17,000 different applications. So what does that mean? Let's go to the next slide, please. So when we think about Shadow IT, I think this is a build out here too,
It is,
Chris. When we think about Shadow IT and we think about those 17,000 different applications, what does it do? Well, it's looking at things like Box. Okay, let's focus on that for example. Box is a cloud storage. It's got a sync engine that you can download to your desktop and start syncing up all your files to the Box cloud. Well, okay, that includes your company data. Well, what if you're using Google Drive as your sanctioned application, your default, right? Your IT department's approved sync or storage area to the cloud, or OneDrive. I prefer OneDrive. But what if Box is doing that? If Box syncs that data to that person's cloud, you've lost control of it. What if that person is leaves your company, next month or in 6 months from now? You've still lost control of that data. That data is theirs. It could include a lot of PII information as well, but you have no control over it, usually. But using something like Cloud App Security, we're monitoring things like that. So you see, Cloud App Security understands, if you can go to the next slide, please. Cloud App Security understands what Box is and has a lot of data on it, plus those, again, 17,000 different applications. You can look at those, all the applications that are found, right, through maybe a Shadow IT type of assessment, and you could discover a lot on what's going on in your organization, and then you can sanction those, meaning they're approved, or you can unsanction them, which means you're going to block them. So when Box tries to sync that data out of your environment, CASB's going to interfere and say, nope, you can't do that, which is an incredible way to control your data, right? So let's go on to the next slide, please. So really cool eye chart here. This is where Shadow IT really comes in. So think about all of the devices in your organization, right? If you have hundreds or thousands or whatever they may be, we're getting a lot of signals off those devices that feed into Microsoft Cloud App Security. Those signals include, hey, what applications are being used in your environment, right? And on what devices are they being used? Okay, and so if we go, next slide, please. So if we dig down a little bit deeper, say here's one device here, okay, and I've got 5 different applications, and I don't know what these are. What is that top one? File Dropper, something like that. It's very small for me to see, but I don't know what that application is.
Yep.
Yeah, Dropper. Thank you. Yeah. Next slide, please. Let's pronounce that one. But this is really cool. So here's an app called Mega. I can read that one. Mega, I've never heard of it. I don't know what that is, but this is a discovery that falls in line with Shadow IT. Someone is using this, whether they know it or not, in the environment to do something, right? I don't know anything about it, but here are the details that have been cataloged within Microsoft Cloud App Security. Again, times 17,000 plus applications. You get all of this information on each one. So now check down at the bottom where it says compliance. And on there, it's telling us, is Mega compliant with something like FINRA or HIPAA or FISMA or GAAP or ISO 27001? The answer is no to this one. Well, let's focus on HIPAA. What if I'm a medical organization? Someone's using this. Maybe 50 people are using this. Uh-oh, now I might have a problem. It's not HIPAA compliant. I'm out of compliance. What's going on here? So now I can research not just the device, but the users that are using this and go to them and start to figure it out. Figure out, why are they using it? Can I turn it off? Can I migrate them to something else that's more sanctioned? Or can I look at even sanctioning something like this? Really, really powerful. And again, this is receiving signals out of the cloud, right? Into the cloud. But what's really interesting too that you can do, you name the firewall vendor, you can export the logs, maybe the past week's worth. It really depends on the file size being ingested. You can take those logs, upload it to this under a free trial of this product within the Microsoft Cloud, and you can have it parse through the data to go looking for things like this. And I every time I do this, this is great as part of a security assessment that we do. Every time I do this, we always find many, many things that shouldn't be there. Right? You just don't know what you don't know, and it's through a security assessment again by someone with some expertise that really know the different products like this that you can use to start to highlight some of the concerns, and then start to plan out what you can do about that. Chris, you want to keep going on? Just
Yeah,
interest of
I
time.
wanted to kind of
Go
talk
ahead.
about the compliance thing one more time. I mean, that
Sure.
that part of it alone is just being in other companies that I've worked with in the past, whether they're clients of mine or people that I've been at, knowing that how you can protect against shadow IT and see if an application that you didn't even know was on your network is going to break your compliance. See, I know just with the way how everything is with, the way how we work now with everybody being remote and they're just trying to use everything at their fingertips so they can work as quick as possible, right? This helps you get that extra added layer of kind of comfort, security, whatever you want to put out there to make sure that you're staying in compliance with the organizations that mandate your compliance. Right? I just can't get over that enough. When I know when I personally do this demo, I harp on that compliance thing because not knowing that you're not HIPAA compliant if you're in the HLS space because somebody has something installed, that you could kill your audit, right? And this just helps you have that peace of mind. I wanted to call that out one more time.
Yep.
That's a big part of this.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yep.
So, I mean, like we talked about earlier, we went through Defender for Office, or all the applications that are out there. Kevin touched on identity. We just talked about CASB, which is the hidden gem. And when we put the poll up there earlier, a lot of people said that when they think of Defender, they think of it for endpoint. So let's do a little shallow dive in here. So the Defender for endpoint, it helps provide that centralized security operations for your Windows and your non-Windows platforms, right? So it can be your traditional endpoint or your servers being your Windows or your Linux or your Mac OSs. We had a chat come up. It's like, do we need to be concerned about risks on our mobiles? Well, Defender can help with the mobile devices being Android and iOS, right? It help tremendously with your virtual desktops, especially with the two that Microsoft does, right? With W365 or Windows 365 being that cloud PC or your Azure virtual desktop. But we can also use Defender to help with the network devices, right? Some of your edge devices that you have out there in your perimeter as well. So Defender for Airport, there's real-time protection, and it's with Windows 10 and Windows 11, you can now configure Defender to be a periodical scan of a system, even with another AV app that's installed. I know before it used to be you can only have one installed and not the other, and now it can play nicely, like Kevin mentioned a little bit ago, right? Not everything is 100%, so having a multi-layer or a defense in depth strategy is always a good thing to have if it's within your budget. And so now the way how Defender is configured, it can work with another AV instead of saying, oh, hey, this Sophos app or hey, this Barracuda app is actually spam because it's trying to attack the same things or scan the same things. We have browser integration now with, IE and Edge that you can have files scanned as they're being downloaded. In 2018, this functionality was also available in Chrome to use as an extension as well. And so now that, Edge is kind of getting better and better, like it's there as well. And with the application guard, the feature allows the sandboxing of a browsing session from the rest of the system, right? So this helps you prevent the malicious websites, or like we were talking about earlier, right? How many 10,000 a day, right, Kevin? So this
Yep.
helps from all the malicious websites that are out there, and to also, use only known good extensions. So there's a lot of things that we can do with this now.
Yep.
Anything you want to add on that before we go on, Kevin?
No, I just love the I love the other slide too, where it talks about it's when we think about Defender, we think about a Windows system, but
Mhm.
now it's everywhere. You want to go on Android, you want to go on iOS, Mac, it's all there
Mhm.
for whatever you need. Yep, whatever you're running in your environment.
So like we were talking about earlier in the beginning of it, don't take our words for it, right? Gartner's done their own studies, Forrester's have done their own stories. This is just on the endpoint security alone, where we were talking earlier about the overall threat landscape, right? So Gartner has done studies just on endpoint security, and Microsoft is up there again, Forrester's up there again. So it's not just the Fender product as a whole, but their endpoint, which is where most of the threat vectors they're going to start, right? You're not going to get a virus that starts out on the server. They're going to start coming in through an email, and it's going to be on your PC, and then it's going to go from there, right? So that's how Microsoft is why I mentioned depth earlier, yeah, you do have that depth strategy with, email protection, with office protection, with endpoint protection, with identity protection, with CASB protection, right? So you can get all this whole depth of protection, and endpoint is kind of the where it all started and where it all kind of stops too, right? So I mean, if you can still get it on your local machine.
Yep.
So I mean, with endpoint now, because we're in this hybrid world, right? You have the traditional network protection. You can do the the allow, the audit, and the block. But instead of doing it, on the firewall level, because you're not in the office anymore, right? You can do this on the actual device. So Defender is it knows, like Microsoft knows that we're no longer in an office, right? We're in this world that we live in now where we're working in McDonald's, we're working in Starbucks, in the airport, at a hotel, at home, right? We have to have this network protection that's local to the PC or the endpoint rather, not just the office perimeter anymore, right? So you have that network protection that is there. And the web threat alerts, right? And same case in point. I know back in when I was the IT admin, we had these web blockers, right? The Barracudas, the web blockers that were out there that helped. We funneled all our web traffic through there now. You don't have to do that because Defender for Endpoint has all that stuff built in there now. So you can configure your policies and you can push them out through the Defender portal. And instead of having them to route everything that goes through, a web filter, so to speak, it's coming just directly through what's already installed on the machine. And you can have the filter configuration, right? If you don't want them to get to you don't want to get to gaming when they're in the office or when they're on their work computer, right? If you want to put a filter on there that says, hey, you don't need to be on a gaming thing during the office hours, right? You can do that now. You don't have to have this appliance or this virtual appliance anymore. It can all be done inside the Defender platform. So I was trying to make sure we wanted to get to Sentinel today, Kevin. I think this helps pull everything back up. So I know I kind of sped through some sections there, but I think this piece that you and I were talking about when we were building this presentation out, this helps us pull everything together. So do you want to double click on anything, or do you want to dive into Sentinel?
Yeah, let's just go ahead and dive in and see if there's
Okay.
any questions that come up here. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
I'll
So
let you start it then.
yeah, you bet. So when it comes to Microsoft Sentinel, right? So this, when you think of a SIEM, okay, many of you may be thinking of a product called Splunk. It's a great product. Again, all great products. There's no doubt. But now I want you to look at and think about Microsoft Sentinel. This was a product that was released in September of 2019. So it's been around just a few years, but if we went back to that, we don't have to do it. Back to the Gartner slide, you'll find Sentinel in there as one of the leaders. It's awesome what's happened in just the first couple of years that it's been out and how big it's grown. I'll show you some examples here in just a few minutes. But this it's not just a security incident and event management system. It also provides some SOAR capabilities. SOAR is security orchestration and automated response. Okay, so not only can it consume all of the different logs that are coming in, but it can also understand those and help take some action on them through something what we call playbooks. Some of the great features about this. It responds to these threats with guidance on okay, this was detected. Here's what Microsoft recommends that you do, and it's very verbose information. It's really something. Also, it's a cloud product, right? There's no servers to install. You just you enable it, and then again you've got to configure it. And you need to know what you're doing with it, but there is no infrastructure. Therefore, because there's no infrastructure, there's really no limitation on the data to ingest. It's not limited by hardware. You're in the cloud, the power of the cloud, take advantage of it. A lot of companies out there have spent years with different products coming up with their own machine learning algorithms and their own security intelligence. You can bring that right into Sentinel. Right. You can also build your own interactive dashboards to visualize all of this data that's coming in. And then when data is found is correlated, from all of these different products. Let me backtrack. The problem with just looking at data that's coming in from Microsoft Defender for Office or Microsoft Defender for Identity or a third-party product each one of those is a siloed event, right? And while each one of those incidents, maybe one trips, it's a caution, right? It's not a red flag. It hasn't gone red yet, but maybe that's on my account. Okay, so but what if something else happens that that Defender for Office picks up, but Identity also picks up? Well, if they're acting separately and there's no correlation between the data, how are we going to connect the dots here? Well, that's where XDR and something like SIEM comes in. Okay, so here we're correlating the data, right? And we're saying, hey, wait a minute, two yellows really do make a red. There's something going on with Kevin's account. I need to alert the security team. So something else that Sentinel does a great job of is it integrates with a lot of major ticketing systems, such as ServiceNow, right? You can create a hook to create an incident ticket that'll then route right away to the security team for them to go ahead and look at. Something else about Sentinel, it's multi-tenant capable, so you can have multiple Office 365 tenants flowing into one Azure Sentinel dashboard and database. Without, again, you don't have any infrastructure. You're only going to pay for what you use. What else is in here? There's templates, a lot of templates that are built in here. A lot of templates that are designed by Microsoft security professionals, of which Microsoft has over 4,000 of them within the company. Those templates are designed for Microsoft products as well as some third-party products that are out there. But if your product is not one of those, you can develop your own template, to define, hey, if you see this, and this, take this action, this and then that, right? You can design a lot of different things in here. Next slide, please. So whoops, I think we're missing one, but that's okay.
Right. I think
that's all
I
right.
skipped ahead a couple because you were
Yeah,
talking about something that we had a slide for, so I wanted to go to it.
Oh, hey, no
How about this
problem. Yeah, so this one here, I was mentioning that Microsoft Sentinel has become a major product for Microsoft in just what the past 2.5 years that it's been around. There's over 10,000 paying customers analyzing 5 petabytes. What exactly is that? Too much for us to even talk about on this call, right? But that's a lot of data being analyzed by these different customers that are out there. And again, Gartner and Forrester have picked up on that, and there's no question as to why it's becoming that big. So Azure Sentinel is something we can spend many hours going very deep on to understand. Again, we just wanted to give you a flavor of that here and to raise awareness that this type of product does exist. And again, it's not just for Microsoft products. It's for, you name the third-party product out there. We can ingest the logs. If there's not a hook, you can design one, or you can just put it in normal syslog type of format and send it over to Sentinel to start analyzing and taking action on. I think that's all we had there.
Yes, I mean, just to kind of reiterate the integrate out of the box with the existing tools, right? So I mean, obviously it says over 150 different ones, but all the big players, most likely you're going to have a hook already set there for. So I know Kevin said that you can build your own hook into it, but with over 150 plus, that are currently set up and more coming, right? It's 150 probably when we pulled this slide a couple of weeks ago, but what is it today, Kevin? I mean, it's like every day things are getting added, right?
Yep. Devil it's a heck of a task to try to keep updated on all of these things.
Yeah, yep. For sure.
And these are just a couple of stats that are out there, because when we think about security operations teams, they're overwhelmed with different logs, different alerts, different incidents, as we call them, coming from all of these different products. When you implement a SIEM, you're really implementing, you're taking the data from all of these different products, and you're having one product analyze all of them together to, again, keep things out of a siloed type of environment, right? So that the security operations team, instead of looking at 5 different incidents for what is based on my account that different products are seeing, right, it now becomes one incident. So that's a lot less of the load for your security operations team to have to look at. So there's a lot going on here. A lot of there's so much more to come when it comes to Microsoft Sentinel. Can't wait to see what's next.
Yeah,
Chris, anything else on this?
Well, not necessarily on Sentinel, but to kind of let's bring it all together, right? So we talked about a lot today, and I know we're starting to run to the end of our time, and I want to make sure that we attack some of these other slides that we have. So, with M365, if you have the M level SKUs and you have the E5 SKUs or the EMS type SKUs, right? You're getting everything that we've talked about today, right? All that you already have it. And so if you were to try to buy all that stuff separately, right? It's Defender for Office, and then you have CASB, and then you have the Active Directory, and then you have the identity, and then you have the endpoint. You have all that stuff. The price goes up and up and up and up. But if you have the entire suite, it's quite a bit of cost savings. So having the E5 security suite that comes with the Microsoft 365 solution, everything that Kevin and I have been talking about today, if you have that, you have all of this at your fingertips, and you just need to, start enabling them and start configuring them. And if you don't know how to enable them or you don't know how to configure them, that's what we're here to help for. So, I mean, if you're like, I just don't know exactly what they were talking about or how it can help us, you have the features. Let's work together to kind of get all that turned on. And so you can talk about, you have all this stuff, right? So another good thing about this is some vendor consolidation. This is one of the key things that I talk about all the time. If you have these licensing, if you have the E5s and some of the E3s, right? It's some in the E3s, but mostly in the E5s, you're paying for that license set already. And you might be paying for some of the same exact functions and functionalities in another security product, right? So just turn it on, enable it, start configuring it, start using it, and start, reducing your IT expenditure on all these different platforms that you have it, and take that money, not necessarily just to save budget, to help reinvest into your organization, right? You can take those dollars and say, hey, now we have this money that we were double dipping on. Let's take that money and invest in IT as far as our business is concerned, right? And so instead of just we're spending all this IT budget to survive in this threat landscape that we have today, now you can reallocate that money because of the consolidation, and you can start thriving with your organization. Kevin, you want to add anything on that?
Yeah, other than when I've been into environments to help out with whether it be security assessments, one of the first things that comes up is okay, do you have a Visio of your environment that we can just start going through? And a lot of the times the answer is no. So then we look at a whiteboard, and we have a lot of people in the room. A lot of network administrators, a lot of security folks, and we start to diagram it out. But as part of that diagram, I like to understand, okay, what other products are at play here? What are the security products? Again, realizing that hey, it's not going to be all Microsoft security, right? There are certain products that do different things, certain contracts in place, but it's always interesting at the end of that exercise to really see all of the different touch points in an environment and all of the labels, the different labels from the security products that are doing these different things. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, you can probably take away 60, 70+% of these, or rather replace them with things that are already part of Microsoft 365 in the Microsoft Defender product suite. It's just always interesting to see that until you go through an exercise like that and see it in front of you. It's just daunting to try to understand what you have in your environment. And then of course when we look at things like cost savings per user, that starts to add up pretty quickly. So yeah, there's a lot here. And that's Chris, you want to move on to the next one?
Yeah, I was gonna say this is another one I wanted to make sure we had time
Yep.
for today, just to kind of bring it all, bring everything that we talked about today in with the security, the SIEM, the XDR that we have. So everything that we have talked about today, I'm bringing this to your attention. So this will help you save time and resources, right? A lot of the stuff that we were talking about is included in the 365 suite if you're paying for those licensing. So you already have that stuff. So I want to make sure that you're getting the most out of that stuff, right? The whole XDR solution at your fingertips, and then marrying it in with the Sentinel or the SIEM that Kevin was talking about, with the industry leading the cloud native SIEM that they're having, that we can start collecting all the data points, right? Not only, I know Kevin talked about it, but I want to make sure to say it again. This doesn't just collect from Microsoft products, right? It can go from all different sorts of products, right? Over 150 out of the box signals can come out of, or go into Sentinel. So that's a big thing. and they're working day in and day out to help reduce all the false positives that a lot of the other SIM providers are coming out there as well, right? So Microsoft knows that this stuff is happening, and they know that people are not just going to want to say all or nothing with Microsoft. They know that people want this defense in depth strategy, and that's why they've adopted it, right? They say, fine, you want to use that product, it's a great product. Let's figure out how we can marry it all together.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Anything
Great
you want to
point,
add
Chris.
in on there?
No, great point. Is that it's just not all. Of course, it integrates with most of the Microsoft products out there, but there's just so much more opportunity to integrate with even more of third-party products, and many of whom are great partners with Microsoft.
Yeah, so I appreciate everybody sticking with us through this. So, next steps, you're like, well, Chris, this is awesome. Thanks so much for this information. But like I was saying, we have this stuff, but we just don't know what to do next. We don't know what the good starting point is because, yeah, you're right. I have all these products, but you and Kevin just like, wham bam it out there for us. And I don't know where to start, right? But that's why we're here to help, right? We can come in, we can help you become, create the strategic roadmap and figure out what you're using and what you're not using. And if you need help starting or you need help just continuing your journey, if you have a current account manager that you're working for, get in touch with them. Say, hey, I need to bring Chris involved. I need to get Kevin involved. You don't have one, use that email address that we have out there on the slide right now. It's c1microsoft at converge1.com, right? I don't think I could have made that one any easier. C1Microsoft at converge1.com. That'll come to me. That'll come to Jeff. It'll come to our entire team on ways that we can help you take that next step, whether it's through a workshop to really dive into what all can Sentinel do or what all can threat protection with Defender can do. You want to talk about some compliancy. You want to help do manage and investigate risk stuff on looking inward versus outward on how you're doing things, right? You want to really get a handle on your identity strategy, right? We have workshops for those that we can help guide you in those. And it's not just some, oh, I've been through plenty of workshops. We're going to have a call with you up front and figure out what do you want to get out of this, right? What's your key takeaways? Make sure that we're addressing the products and the projects that you're wanting to, and how you can address it with all the stuff that you already get with inside your licensing. So with that, what can you do today? I know Jeff's on the call and he's talked about this countless times. I know Kevin's talked about this countless times. We've done a webinar a handful of months ago where we had an individual from the FBI come in. The biggest thing that you can do, the 100% biggest thing you can do is implement MFA today, right? Over 95% of attacks would not have happened that we've seen through studies if you had MFA enabled. So if you don't get anything out of all that, everything Kevin and I talked about, please, please, please make sure that you are doing MFA so you don't become the next stat that you hear about on the news. If you need to weigh how you can go the next step further from that, start looking into zero trust. Zero trust is a very good way, especially in this hybrid mode that we're in today, on how you can just adopt a strategy because you can't protect your perimeter anymore, right? So adopt that zero trust principles that are out there. If you don't know what that is, I wrote a blog a handful of months ago that it's out on our C1 site that you can get to. I'm sure if you just type in zero trust in Google or in Bing that you're going to find plenty of things for it, right? So there's so many things you can do today by just enabling them. So Kevin, you have any closing thoughts you want to add?
Chris, I love the idea of a workshop, right? Like when I mentioned before about, when we want to look and discuss security for an environment, it's best with everyone in a room or on a virtual call, doing a whiteboard using Teams, for example. It's really interesting every time you start to do that and what you can map out in an environment, for lack of anything else, right? Again, like I said, a lot of times I find that most organizations don't have a map like what it is that we're looking for, and then once we start to map everything out, then it's like, okay, well, let's talk about Microsoft Defender for Identity, right? And where does that plug in? Where does it overlay? And what spots in your environment can that really start to can you have it take on that service that you might have a third party on right now? Why are you using the third party? There might be a reason for that. Something that some little minute detail that one product does that the other does not. Right? Fair enough. Let's move on. Right? Let's see where we can really start to simplify your environment, reduce costs, and try to turn up some of these other protection type of services that are out there. But it's a workshop, getting everyone committed, getting everyone in the room together to really talk about these things, and then also talk about next steps. Okay, where do we begin? Because not as you've got it all laid out with maybe a side of a whiteboard with all of the different things to do, you might have 20 different things. But again, where do you begin? It might be something as simple as, of those 20 things, you may not have MFA enabled because you weren't certain how to implement it, because there's a lot that goes into that. Again, you could just click a button and turn it on, but you're going to cause a lot more issues than you really want to the next day. So how do you phase in that approach? What's the communication plan behind that, right? What services do you have to really be aware of that are using accounts that you can't put MFA on there, but how do you still protect them in a way that's going to keep the malicious actors out, right? So that there's a lot of discussions. It's always a lot of it's a lot of brainstorming. It's a lot of
Mhm.
fun for me as a presenter. Chris, I know is for you too, to really just brainstorm and talk about environments and what it could be like, right?
Yeah.
And as well as pulling up demos. Hey, let me go into. We have access to a lot of demonstration environments where these products you know are active in there, that we can pull up different scenarios and say, hey, here's what's going to happen when MFA is turned on. Here's Microsoft's implementation of it. Or here's CASB. Let's go a little bit deeper into shadow IT and assessments and show you what CASB, Microsoft Cloud Application Security, can find. So again, those workshops are just the best way to start. I can't stress that enough, to understand your own environment at a little bit higher of a level, perhaps.
Yeah. But yeah, Kevin, I really appreciate you joining me today, and thank you all that joined the webinar. I know we had a lot of information, and I tried to get to it as quick as we could to be respectful of your time. If you had to join late or you had to dip out early, we will have a playback available in about 24 hours. And if you've opted in, you'll receive that link in a recording, right? So don't forget, we have another web series coming up. It's our Future of Modern Work Summit, where somebody I'm really excited about that's going to be on here. We're going to have the Microsoft VP of Modern Work, Jarrett Spatera. He's going to come on. He's going to be our keynote, and he's going to tell you ways how the modern work landscape is evolving and what they expect to come up there. And if you have any questions, feel free to email us. Like I said earlier, C1Microsoft at converge1.com. And if you want to know more about upcoming webinars and such, you can follow us on Twitter or LinkedIn or Facebook. And I just dropped them all in the chat for you as well. So I really appreciate you, Kevin, again for joining on here.
Thank you.
I can't thank you enough. Thank you, everybody. And I'll let everybody get back to the rest of the day.